William Moretti, who is in Strathmore University. These are four private universities in Kenya, and each one of us here leads the teacher professional development programs at our respective universities. So at KC University, I am the director, a Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence. And basically what we do at the university is enhancement of pedagogical skills of our university faculty. I don't know the situation in other places, but usually you find at the basic levels of education. At least in Kenya, we have the primary, which takes 9 years, and then we have the senior secondary, which takes 3 years. There is a new shift that is taking place. And from there, we have the teacher training colleges and vocational training institutes, and then up there, we have the universities. You'll find at the basic educational level and at the tertiary universities, except the tertiary institutions, except the university, it is mandatory for all teachers to have proficiency, actually background training as teachers or as pedagogists. But that is not the case when it comes to the university. When you are at the university, you get your master's degree or qualifications or your PhD qualifications, it's then assumed automatically you qualify to be a university faculty or a lecturer. The question that concerns all of us is that, yes, we know you are a specialist, probably, in agriculture. In our university, we specialize more in business courses, in science and technology, as well as education and performing arts. And we have actual specialists trained in those areas of specialization. But among all of us, as a staff of teaching staff, about 450,000, it's only us in the education, School of Education, and we are 20 of us who have specific training as teachers. The rest of us, of course, they are specialists, but they are not teachers. And the question that begs all of us is, yes, you are a specialist, but who trained you to be a teacher? The fact that you can stand before students and, say something, talk, transform them into whatever you want, still that one does not make you a teacher. There is more to it that makes you a teacher than just standing before students and, I would say, in quotes, performing. So at the university, that is what the center does, the center that I direct. It agree. You can still see the injustice that we do to education, despite the role that we play at the university, we are just a unit of three staff who are meant to change 450. Yeah, so you can see where we are even. But you see, that's also a big step for our university. In other universities, such centers are not there. And the continuous development of the teacher, we have ad hoc, 2-day, 3-day trainings. That's what happens. And they focus on a narrow aspect of education. So despite the fact that as a university, we are a small department, playing a critical role is still a huge step for the university sector in Kenya, that there is that recognition by our Vice Chancellor on that. So the big question that we have been asking ourselves, and thank you to Ian and Irene, because what I'm going to present here is a kind of thought that was brought about by a 5-day session that we had in Nairobi sometimes in October last year, September, I think, I can't recall the dates, last year. And out of that training, as a university, led by our department, that is the Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence, we have developed a 12-month intense hands-on course. We are yet to agree on the name, but we are calling it Postgraduate Certificate in Higher Education Pedagogy. And it's founded on the structure that you shared with us and trained us on. It's yet to be approved by our regulator, that is the Commission for University Education. But once it is done, it will lead one to a qualification for teaching at the university level. So the question that begs us today is, who develops the developer? Yes, I am the trainer. We are the trainers. But as ourselves, who enhances us as we go by? So that is a big question that we have. What kind of support do institutions of higher learning offer the developers? Bearing in mind that this is a new, not really the new situation, but it is a kind of shift that is starting to get interest at the university level. As we know, in various areas of specialization, we have expert trainers in that. But the question comes in that trainer, who trained the trainer, and how do trainers enhance themselves? That's the question we are asking ourselves currently, and that is what we are trying to work on. In Kenya, there is a huge shift from the knowledge-based kind of education system to competency-based education, where there is insistence on mastery of competencies. It is a complete shift. And this shift in itself has brought in more pressure to our faculty in that they are not yet trained to handle those graduates. And last year, we had to quickly reform our teacher education programs, because the graduates that we are releasing are going to train students at the secondary school level whom are in a different system than the one that these teachers are being formed. So we had to transform that curriculum. It is a big challenge. And in the next 2 years, by 2029, the universities in Kenya will be receiving the first graduates of the new system. So the pressure is even more, because other than the pedagogy itself, we now again have to enhance that pedagogy so that we tune it towards competency-based kind of training. And we shouldn't forget about the advances in artificial intelligence and how they affected our teaching and learning processes, especially when it comes to assessment, writing of theses and dissertations is another big thing where you find students are even ahead of the teacher. If you continue training the way we train, that is traditionally, I think it is lacking place currently with advances that we are having in artificial intelligence. So out of the same program that we are doing, we are training our faculty on how to utilize AI in teaching, learning, research, and assessment. And when Jan and Irene were in Nairobi, we were working on that program. And we concluded our training around March. Okay. Sorry, I think I talked too much, sorry. So there is several realities that I want us to think around, and one focuses on the credibility challenge. And as pedagogical experts, we are often undervalued compared to other disciplines, where you find even the resources that are allocated and directed to the development of the developer are minimal. But still, there's something that is being done. Here, I am fully funded and sponsored by our university to come and attend this session. That is quite something. Yeah. Reality number 2, leading change without authority. I think I had said that one earlier on. We are leading the change, but where do you draw that authority from? And I believe in conferences like what we are having here and the sharing of ideas, that would be quite something. I'm looking at you. Then there is resistance and low attendance, bureaucracy, and initiatives, fatigue, yet continued advocacy for better teaching and learning. You'll find when you're planning for these training sessions, we do them in kind of hands-on workshops like this. But you'll find our trainees, the teachers themselves, they are really not keen. I've been training you guys for the last 10 and 15 years. What is this new thing that you want to bring to me? That is usually a challenge. And we have come up with a model which we think can help improve teacher agency there. We have the reflective properties, scholarly growth, collaboration and networks, and institutional support. Those are the various aspects that we think can help change leadership when it comes to pedagogy. And I'll skip that one. So the lessons from Kenya. Here's KC University Faculty Development. AI focuses on continuous professional development, AI literacy, and pedagogical certification, but these are certificates of attendance. But given the other program that we are developing, we'll have, it is modular in approach, and each module, it has seven modules. Because of the interest of time, and we already have spent some time, those are the recommendations, and then this is what we are intending to do. Sorry, I should have managed myself better than what I've done. So investing in education developers is a strategic investment in institutional transformation, and should not be seen as an expenditure of resources. That is not worthwhile. It is critical, and in fact, as a university, we have seen that in our social media pages involving staff, we have a big number of part-timers. You'd see them asking, where does KCA University get its teachers? The question is like they're so good. Thank you very much.
Our friends from Charles University, go up on the stage and get ready. I want you to leave those questions on the screen, and like I told you, just take a minute, write a comment, maybe an answer to these questions or something else, a question you want to ask at the end, or even to find Simon during the break. So take a minute, and then I'll signal when you can start.
Tak a zkusíš si stoupnout kousíček teda sem, takhle, a je tam vidět tam na to. That's the time. Well, not yet. Super. Tak jo, už Už je tam? Nebo ještě ne?
Okay, I see a lot of people not writing, and that's okay, but I hope it sticks in your mind. So like I said, all the questions are just on the floor. That's about a minute, and in the interest of time, I pass it off to our friends from Charles University in Prague.
Good morning, everybody. It's really glad to be. We're really glad to be here. My name is Bartłomiej Wróblewski, and this is my colleague Karolina Duszyńska. We come from, as it was said, Charles University in Prague, the Czech Republic, and we work as educational developers at our institution. I work at the central level, and Karolina works at the faculty level at the Faculty of Education. And today we would like to share with you our experience with a course that we designed for developing developers. But before we give you any details about the course, I would like to show you a little bit of our context so that you better understand our course design choices. As you can actually see, Charles University is a large university. It has 17 faculties located in 3 different cities, and it is extremely decentralized and research focused. So for such an institution, it's very difficult to implement something that would be university wide, and it's the same with educational development strategies. The first thing that we did many years ago was to introduce or open our first teaching and learning center at the central level, but we quickly realized that this is not an ideal choice for such a huge and decentralized university. So we decided that we need smaller teaching and learning centers at each faculty, and we started doing that a year and a half ago. And we created what we call the ecosystem of educational development at Charles University. As you can see here, we have faculty teaching and learning centers working at each faculty, and they are in a huge network that is coordinated by the central unit at our university, which is the Pedagogium platform, our teaching and learning center, in the middle of all this. But as you can imagine, for this huge university, it's definitely, there are many challenges that we face, many problems that we encounter. But today, we would like to focus on one, which is experts and lack of them in the Czech Republic, because this topic is relatively new to us. And to face that problem, we actually put together an international team. Colleagues from the Czech Republic, including Karolina and I, a colleague from Italy and a colleague from the US. And we started talking, discussing what we can actually do to develop our experts, to be honest, from scratch, very often. We talked to many stakeholders at Charles University, did some needs analysis, and we realized that we need to create a course that would help us reach 3 main goals. And these are the goals, as you can see. First of all, give some basic knowledge and help develop core practices in our new educational developers. But more importantly, it's about supporting community building at Charles University, since it's extremely decentralized and these educational developers actually have no opportunity to meet. And sometimes a faculty has only one developer, so they might feel lonely. So that was one of the very important aspects of our course. And the last one is increasing confidence in their new role, which is very difficult to do within a course. While designing the course, we went for the ADI model that many of you might know. For the analysis, design and development, we had more or less 1 year. So long, not long, you can evaluate yourself. And we delivered the first course in spring 2025. Right now we are in the middle of the 3rd cycle of our course, and as you can imagine, after every single run we evaluated, redesigned, but the redesign, Karolina will mention that in a moment, but before she does that, I would like to show you the course as it is today. We called the course Becoming an Educational Developer, and it's a semester course for 4 credits, and it has a blended course design format. You have in-person sessions, synchronous online sessions, and asynchronous tasks. Everything is divided into 13 modules. You can see some of the examples in the slide. And for every single module, besides the last one. We always have a pre-meeting task and a post-meeting task for our new colleagues. So these are the basic parameters, but the biggest question was how to plan the confidence building. And this was something that we struggle with, obviously, but we tried to do that by implementing several tools, and these are the tools that we would like to show you. First of all, it's experiential learning. So we have a lot of role-playing, a lot of case-based work, basically in every single module. We use authentic tasks. It is possible for us because these people already work at the university. They started working at the Teaching and Learning Center. So basically the tasks within the course, we just ask them to go to their workplace, do things, and then come back and reflect that with us. They really value that, and they always emphasize that this is something that helped them with their work. Then we have collaboration and community building, so a lot of peer learning activities, discussions, sharing experience, learning through mistakes. We intentionally include expressing our own mistakes as educational developers in the course. We emphasize that, we normalize the topic. And finally, transparent teaching. So basically for every single module, we add this meta-commentary to comment our teaching choices while teaching. And we strongly believe that this will help support their confidence in their role. So that was some basic parameters about the course, and now the course redesign.
Thank you. So it doesn't work, sorry. As educational developers and also as researchers, we asked some questions, research questions. How can such a course be designed to integrate theory, practice, professional identity development, and also what tensions we can analyze, describe. Just to mention our course attendees, graduates, it's not that just we said goodbye to them. We tried to connect with them, to meet regularly, and to discuss the impact. The research study was a clear design-based research, so I think I don't need to explain it. Maybe it's interesting how we collected data through participants' feedback on site, and we had also a delayed feedback questionnaire, reflection activities, portfolios, and last but not least, our team discussions and our teaching diaries. So here are the 3 cycles. All together, we had 19 participants who has finished, and in the last cycle, we have 10 of them. So the group is not that extensive, but here are our preliminary findings. What worked across the cycles? For sure, the participants valued and appreciated the strong community and international perspective. High relevance to their work, to their activities. They valued the modeling, including that we named our mistakes and worries and questions. We tried really to do what we were teaching. And it was very interactive, active tasks. At the same time, it was a huge workload about which we heard lots of comments. So the modeling in practice was probably the most highlighted factor of our course. What? Oh, really? What tensions did we had about the design? The first tension, workload and depth. Should it be broad? Should there be extensive workload? Or should we go deep in the topic, worries, skills, activities? Then the balance between theory and practice. Especially in the first cycle, we had tensions between the teacher role and the educational developer role. That's fairly not the same. And the last one, autonomy versus structured practice. We tried also to rename these tensions with the participants and to make them explicit. And we tried to take them as challenges, of course. Thank you. After there were some changes after the first cycle, we made some more clear role framing, especially between the educational developer and teacher, more explicit discussions. We improved sequencing of the modules, and we also spread it in a longer period of time because the workload was really intense, and tried to do some more scaffolding. This is from our questionnaire, from the delayed feedback. The response rate was about 60%, which means, honestly, 12 participants replied. So that's not much. That's the sample, what we had. What was interesting, the results are quite positive. I would stress what didn't work. Discussing educational development with leadership, institutional leadership, that's probably the most challenging one. And we tried to connect these questions with the main goals. So I think we are quite happy with these results. What was really important, the stress on community building. You simply don't leave the people alone. You build community. Bartek does on the university level an extensive work to support the community. Yeah, and not to tell you, last week we had a wonderful event of 3 days in nature. And so, what we learned. We need to be explicit. Authentic tasks connected to educational development really help. We need space for reflection, for their issues, their problems, community building, of course, and modeling of practice. That's never enough of this. So the key insight could be that what we learned, preparing educational developers requires skill development, of course, but also the role understanding which is connected to confidence building. You really need courage to do this work, and it shall be supported, and the community formation. For discussion, we have these questions. So that's the last slide. For you to think, I assume you all can read, so I will not read them. These are our contacts, and here are the questions. So that's it.
Thanks very much. So same thing as before. Take a minute, jot down some questions, think about these so that you can talk about them at the end of the session or during the breaks while our next presenting comes up. So just get ready to let me know.
So, may I show the next slide?
Maybe leave the questions up for now.
Okay, I will leave. I will just for a minute try the keys here. Yes, okay. Do that.
Is my head in the way of these questions? I'm in the way of lots. I will interrupt your thought process now and then introduce our next presenter, Ivona from Jagiellonian University in Krakow. So take it away, please.
Oh, it doesn't look fully as I expected. Okay, doesn't matter. You will have such task to imagine what will be in the first line. My boss, Anna Sajdak-Górska, and me represent very similar university, the Charles University, only a few years younger, but it means also that more than 100 years younger than Salamanca University. Sorry, guys, only 650 years or something like that. What we would like to present you. We all know that there is a difference between the expectation, knowledge and skills needed for the teacher work and educational developer. And this is exactly what Charles' colleague.
You can use the microphone, please, for the people online.
Okay, but it means it should be that, because otherwise the people don't see the slide. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so we just refer to your presentation and also to your presentation when we see that difference. But I would like to show you also the content of our story, as it is similar to many Central and Eastern European countries. Pointer, okay, pointer. We started in the 60s, 70s, 80s. It was a compulsory teacher training for university teachers. So everybody who would like to become an academic lecturer with the PhD degree should have such training exam. But it was so-called red pedagogy with very direct transmission focus, and the discipline was also one of the main points. You may ask Anna about more deep content of such training. Then the political changes, which many of you probably know, happen in Europe, especially starting in Poland. Then the quality assurance become more and more important. So our ministry, in that third step, put quite a lot of money in university teacher training. So the several courses, means hundreds of courses, were organized, and teaching competences became a strategic issue. But recently, also such money came to creation of teaching and learning centers. What is relatively new in Poland, although our centers start to operate more than 20 years ago, there is a relatively new step for us, because we reinvent some wheels even. But there is the question we asked. And I would like to show you our team, which consists of those people who represent pedagogy. Pedagogy in the meaning educational studies which focus on the human, not of procedures, processes, and something like that, of human being, people, students, teachers, and so on. Then we have several people who represent pedagogical content knowledge field, means they are experts in subject education, because majority of them also organize pre- and in-service school teacher training. But we also have several lecturers in particular subject, like, for example, law or Polish studies. So it was a challenge at the beginning. I suppose some of my previous speakers also experienced it. But at the end, we find it as a really added value and very important value. But what was really a challenge is to find a common language. Means, because we spoke really different languages. The STEAM education differs so much from literature education. And also the discipline as such, they differ so much. So we start to build a common foundation. As you may notice from all of those post-it cards and posters and what I present on the pictures, there are the results of several hours of discussion. We also try to find the common identity, because in Polish language there isn't a phrase which could be the direct translation of the term educational developer or academic developer. We just don't have such words in Polish. So it was a really difficult task to find the common identity among us. One of the solutions was, from job shadowing to co-teaching. We also proposed that Introduction to Higher Education course, not very long, just 30 hours, but each module was taught by different expert from our educational developer. And because such course has really 22 years old, is 22 years old, then we invited new educational developers to join us, so they may observe the sessions, they may discuss it with the main teacher, then usually based on the evaluation, then co-design the next period or next term, and recently they just do the co-teaching together, so they learn this way. That's the answer for the question how to develop developers. Another issue is mentoring. Mentoring is start to be very popular in Poland at the university level just now. But as you probably know, mentoring needs supervision. Mentoring, coaching, tutoring without supervision is the direct way to the disaster. So we organized such supervision course, and there were the individual supervision, group supervision. You may look at the picture with Anna and the results of one of the group meeting. But we also organized such bilateral mentoring. So those educational developers use that approach. I mentor you, you mentor me next time. Yes. Something like 15 hours of mentoring, the next 15 hours, and so on. And this way, we also build the confidence in being a mentor, because it's not typical, especially for, as I represent, hard and natural sciences. Yes, we also approach that in, how you call it? Something is not as you expect, yeah? So we have a series of webinars. There is a 5th edition. We just completed the 5th edition, so 50 years. 5th year of that webinar every 2 weeks. And sometimes we propose such webinar called What a Beautiful Catastrophe. And we will repeat it in the next years also. So why things do not always go as planned. Yeah? And it really supports our own, means educational developers, reflection of our own teaching and training practice. And we share the critical incidents, and we also analyze what happened, why, and so on. For the webinar, we also invite, as you, international experts. So sometimes they share their approach, which differ quite a lot, sometimes from our point of view and our view on higher education. As we all are, or at least used to be, researchers, we organized the bilingual bilateral, no, forget it. We organized the annual conference called Ars Docendi, from Latin, which we like at the old universities quite a lot. It is the art of teaching. And that annual conference give us an opportunity to stay in touch in research in higher education or in human resources management or many other subjects which are necessary to be aware when you try to go forward, not only based on your own experience. So such conference has usually 2 dimensions, sometimes 3, but the main 2 is development of educational developers, creation of teaching and learning centers, what does it mean, teaching excellence and that kind of stuff. The second dimension is just higher education, work with students directly. And based on that, we developed a very similar approach as my previous speakers, means that our activities and such approaches together allow us to build the learning community. Not only community of practice, what we were at the beginning of the center, but the learning community based on learning, reflection, collaboration, mentoring, but the practice is still in the middle. Yeah? So there's the central point of our activities and so on. And the last slide show you the recommendation, but there are the recommendation for the universities and countries in similar situation as ours. So you might discuss how much it fits to your situation. First of all, building the community before building a curriculum. So first think about people, then about the subject, content, methods, and so on. combine theory with authentic practice, exactly as the Charles show us, because our teachers and also our educational developers in many cases resist a little bit theory as something what was developed somewhere in the world, you know, English-speaking countries, which of course are not the same as the Slavic countries in the Central Europe and that kind of stuff. So we really have to ground our activities around the authentic practice. Then what we are really very proud about is we try to change the culture of visits, yeah, observing somebody's work, because due to that red pedagogy and communistic time in Poland, our teachers really hate somebody else on the lecture room because they usually was based with control and assessment. Nowadays, we try to introduce supportive visit, peer visit, but of course we need to train, what is not the proper word in Polish, train the teachers and educational developers in doing that, as you did, or you did also. Support identity development, especially because of the lack of the Polish phrase which describe it, and not only the skills acquisition. Yeah? Our experts know how to educate lecturers, but it is not enough. Yeah? They need to feel really good in the role of educational developers and recognize the contextual differences, because as a big research university, we have medical studies, law, biotechnology, history, language. And thank you very much for your attention.
I've never had that before. I go like this, and then you just end it. So as my colleagues from University of Groningen maybe head up and prepare, again, so take a minute, reflect on this a little bit, jot down a note or a question if you have it so you don't forget. So just take a minute. I'll let you know.
Onze slides zijn ook helemaal doorbaar. Dat heb ik net even gecheckt.
Oh. Wat zei ze ook alweer? Hoe zei ze dat ook weer? Constructive failure of zoiets.
Bij ons staat ook dat we van Charles University zijn. Dus misschien moet je even noemen dat dat dus ook bij haar staat.
Okay, for another perspective on things, maybe we move on, like I said, my colleagues, University of Groningen.
Thank you very much. We are Irene and I'm Jan Volkert from the University of Groningen. As you can see, that's in the northern part of the Netherlands. You mentioned, Ivona, something like, have I remembered well, constructive failure? Yeah, this is probably something like that. We had to prepare the slides all together in one file just before the session. And you can see that it went a bit wrong. Because I started with the Charles University slides, and then the logo comes throughout all the slides. So that's one thing that we can learn from this is don't do these things very late. How did we start to think about how to develop the developer? Around 2019, we got a question to offer a proposal on professional development for a big project. And one of the elements of that was train the trainer. And at that moment, I thought, well, we are experienced educational developers. It should be very easy. It's a piece of cake. We got the project, and then the problem started. Because it was not so easy as what we expected. Because suddenly we were asking ourselves, why are we doing what we are doing? Is what we are doing the right thing? How do I know that it's the right thing? Am I, as a trainer, as a teacher, as a developer, a good model? Or how do I know? Do we talk about it with each other? So, thinking about this, we came to the conclusion that we really need to rethink our own work. It had also an impact on our own program and on our own trainings. Anyway, we came up with something, and we will demonstrate it now.
Yeah, so I want to explain a bit about the approach that we have been using. So you might know the theory from Malcolm Knowles, which is already quite old. I refer to it as adult learning theory because the word andragogy is very hard for me to pronounce. But these are 6 principles that he describes on how to teach adults. And that's also what we use to teach our educational developers on how they can teach university teachers. But that's also what we incorporate ourselves on how to do those trainings. So, for instance, the principles that Malcolm Knowles describe are our participants or our adults that are in the room, our educational developers, they just need to know. They have a more, it's different from university students that maybe follow a more fixed curriculum, but the people that we have in the room, they want to know things that they can apply right away in their own training. They're more independent and they also bring a lot of experience themselves. They have a lot of experience in their own institutions, so we can also make use of their ideas and the knowledge that they have. So they're really ready to learn, they value, and they also want to gain things that are very relevant for them, so that they can apply it right away in their own context. So it's also more problem-centered, like what is the problem and how to solve it right away. And they are, of course, luckily, very highly motivated to learn. So in practice, what we do, for instance, is that participants in our training, they develop their own project. So for instance, they develop a training for university teachers on how to deal with AI, or a basic training skills on how to develop university teachers, like when they first enter the institution. As I said, we really try to make use of their experience, because Rick and Jan Volker and myself, we feel that we are not the most knowledgeable people of this world, but the people that are in a room know a lot of different things. So we really try to pick their brains and be more of a facilitator to guide these discussions. So I think what I already mentioned is also that we try to teach what we preach and do a lot of explicit modeling, but also really try to explain why we are doing certain things. So we do constantly a lot of different activities with our participants that we think they can also use in their own training contexts. Of course, we connect to the situations of the participants, mostly also by sharing their own context. And we try to have that facilitator role. So not as much as a trainer role, but really trying to facilitate the discussions between the teachers that are, between the educational developers that are there. So this is more or less the schedule that we have at the moment. We spend, when we do it for a week, this is a weekly, at the moment we have it as a summer school, where teachers come, where educational developers come in a week to Groningen, or for instance, we travel a week to a different context, so we traveled for a week to Nairobi. We spend a lot of time on introducing ourselves, and also when the educational developers come in, they already thought about the project that they wanted to develop. So on the first day, we actually spent quite some time on explaining those projects to each other, so that everyone knows, okay, this is the expertise of my colleague, and this is what they are working on during the week. On Monday, also, our day is a bit more theory-focused. So we use a lot of literature, for instance, from the ICED journal, but I also do PhD research myself on the didactical development of university teachers. And we have a lot of research that to try to bring in on Monday on how do university teachers develop. On Tuesday, we work on the needs analysis, so that's also a little bit of homework. I don't go too much in detail about that, but participants already did some interviews with stakeholders in their own institutions, and we try to develop that further on the Tuesday. So what are the needs of the university teachers in their institution? And a large part of the Tuesday is also the design. And we also make use of the EDDI model, which is already mentioned in the first presentation. Wednesday is also a day that we are trying to work on our training skills, because we feel that sometimes as educational developer, we have never time to work on our training skills ourselves. So that is the Wednesday. And Thursday, maybe you are familiar with the word micro-teaching. We do a little bit of micro-training. So everyone prepares like a 10 to 15-minute training, and we give that training to our peers and give feedback to each other. And the idea is also that you maybe focus on one specific activity that might inspire the other colleagues that are there. And micro-challenges, I won't go too much into that, but some questions come up during the week. For instance, how to motivate teachers to actually join my training, and we work on that on the first day to wrap up the day. On Friday, we work a bit on continuous professional development. So how can we develop university teachers throughout their career in their didactical competences, and also on the evaluation of the activity, because in the EDI model, it's also important to evaluate. I'll give it to you, right?
Yep. So we still have a few challenges. One of them is, what does it mean to be a good trainer of teachers? We still have questions about it. It's already difficult to discuss what is a good teacher, but then training or teaching teachers is even more complicated. And we don't know much, also not from research, how we can develop these training skills. A very important thing, many of us have probably seen lecturers teaching. And many comments that I give to when I do observations is, yeah, maybe you should talk a little bit less and give more activities to the students. But that means as a trainer, as a facilitator, you should also shut up now and then. And as a trainer of educational developers, you should even more clear. That's even a higher level of being able to shut up. And that's difficult sometimes. It was already mentioned that the contextual situation, also the intercultural, we work a lot with internationals. We notice that there is difference. I'm sometimes aware, but probably I'm also sometimes totally ignorant to it, that I have no clue that there is something different. Especially in international context, it's difficult to find out how it works. Is training educational developers similar in all countries? Does it differ? What are the differences? How does it work? So our question was, so we are working on this. We are struggling with it. It's a challenge. It's interesting. We find it nice, but still we want to learn more for ourselves. We would like to discuss it. And one of the things that came up among us, and you have also seen it in previous presentations here, can we develop something like an international framework for international developers? Would that work? Is it useful, or is it totally useless? That's a question what we would have. And the second question that we have is, would it make sense to develop an international shared program? Would it help us to become better educational developers? Or should we favor diversity? That's a question. Irene already mentioned it. We organize summer schools to discuss with educational developer how to become an educational developer. It's not because we are the best educational developers in the world, we want to learn, but I think the only possibility of becoming better is sharing these ideas and sharing sharing discussions about your own role. There are still places, so if you want to apply, you are very welcome. Thank you.
happy because I'm involved in these programs, as you said, so I didn't want to take this role also as a discussant. So that's why I'm very happy to introduce Angelika. She's here to sort of have this objective perspective as a discussant, just to recap some of these thoughts before we give it to you. So I'll leave the floor to you.
What to say, right? After this amount of, is that on? Yeah. Can you hear me? Perfect. Okay. So what to say after this amount of different insights, the different contexts that you share, the different approaches that you have, the different values that we see in your institutions and what you wanted to achieve in your approaches in supporting the educational developers to develop further. And the question that struck me was listening to you, but also before communicating with you, looking at your slides, was what competencies actually are we talking about? Yeah, so no one really talked about the what are the didactical competencies that you addressed, Irina, or what kind of skills do you think that education developers should actually have? And this, I think, is something that is really critical when we think about the setting of this conference. Yeah, when we think about what we heard over the last days, like it is so important in the face of the uncertainty that we are having right now, in the face of the super complexity that Barnett, I think, coined, but David was talking about more like the polycrisis that we are experiencing. Yeah, so what kind of competencies do educational developers today actually need when facing these uncertainties, when facing these challenges of reinventing ourselves the whole time? I have no idea why I'm keeping that in my hand the whole time. Okay, so these are the questions that are really in my heart when I think about how the developers can develop further. And I think that this is something that we should really focus into in our discussions, having in the back of our minds that we are, as education developers, coming from so many different backgrounds. We bring so many different perspectives in. Haaland and Staniforth at one point said that we are a family of strangers. Yeah, and I think a family should support each other, but we don't always have to understand each other. Yeah, just to make sure what is it what we actually want to achieve. Education, David said before, is not neutral, and that is something that might be something to be addressed in these kind of trainings. Beyond all the fact that I'm totally pro having the mentoring elements and the supporting each other in visiting each other, that is so perfect, everything. But I think we can think a bit further still and talk about the how to become more resilient, how to become better in dealing with the uncertainties that we are facing currently. So, and that's about it. Yeah, I don't want to talk too long, but offer the floor to you. And I don't think I even took my 5 minutes, right? Pam.
So this is the part we want to leave it open to questions or comments. I would like all our presenters, if you could, come on up. This will be a little tricky. We don't have a handheld microphone. So we will make it very awkward and uncomfortable for you to move around who's with the microphone. If you are watching online, my sincerest apologies. I have been trying to log into YouTube to check your questions, and I cannot. If somebody's on YouTube and wants to pose a question for those people, please do. But I apologize to you if you're watching this online. That is my fault. So I will sort of guide this from below and get out of your way. But really, I invite questions, but also opportunities to brag. If you feel like you do something really well that some of our presenters were struggling with, please add it. This is a discussion. Okay? So just to show hands if you have questions.
Phase. And I said all that without the microphone. So eloquently said. Let me restate that very quickly. What suggestions do you have for ongoing development of established educational developers?
I think this is on. Is this microphone working?
Thank you.
Who wants to take this one? Okay.
Maybe not a solution, but an idea, a suggestion, because I don't think that there's one solution fits all. I think in our context, and I'm talking about Charles University only, right now we have a lot of going on, and we are working with beginning educational developers, but I strongly believe that the key for us is the community building. So when we have this basis, which is the community, then we can use that community to develop within itself. As Carolina mentioned, last week we had a 3-day, let's call it retreat, for our educational developers. They went 2 hours outside Prague in the forest by a nice lake, spent 3 days together, and basically creating just space for them. I think it was really beneficial. It's not only about giving them more expertise in that traditional format, but also giving them space to develop with each other. And share, basically. Sharing is the key.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. It's learning from peers. I'm already happy that we finally have something for beginning educational developers. That's also good. I mean, we need to start somewhere. But also by simply doing it, by organizing it, like our summer school or train the trainers, it's also learning for ourselves. It's developing ourselves. And that's in discussion with others. That's in getting different perspectives that gives us different ideas, that makes us sharper. But there is definitely more to develop also for developing the developers. It's becoming a lot of development. Yeah.
We both with Anna have been working for the last 20 years, so we are quite experienced. And because of that, this year we introduced the program for international study visit. So visit the other centers on site, looking at other people do, maybe in totally different contexts, but it is really refreshing. So we are going to Groningen, to Chile, and some other, to Prague.
Welcome. And you also mentioned supervision. I think it's a great place, opportunity to develop, share in a non-judgment environment. If people want to be supervised.
Okay.
Something to add?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not for now. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I got in early, thanks so much. I've got two, is that okay? I've got one question and then sort of a comment or possible suggestion. So the first question is kind of deriving from, Simon, your model of what are the needs to create an educational developer or an academic developer. And one of those cogs in that model was institutional support. And I suppose this is for all of you. You've built some incredible programs, you're doing some great evaluations of those, but how do you gain that institutional support to create those programs in the first place? And what kinds of challenges have you encountered?
Okay, I think I can begin on that. From our university, that is KC University in Nairobi, Kenya, I think I'm proud because our lead, the Vice Chancellor, is heavily onto the development of the, not the development of the developer, but developing expertise in our faculty. The aspect of developing the developer at our university is still new. Yeah, but now what we are emphasizing heavily now is the developing of the trainers themselves. And that is why it is so of a lot of interest to me that we are able to start thinking of how to develop the developer. Because even the program right now that we are developing is for the teacher trainers themselves, not for the developers. So as at now, that is where we are. And that's why I like that challenge of visiting other institutions. You didn't mention Kenya. I don't know why. Yeah. Because I think that need is there. Yeah.
I can mention Kenya, visiting Kenya, why not? Maybe I'll just mention one thing that was not mentioned in our presentation, that many of these things are unfortunately project-based. And many of educational development activities in the Czech Republic are project-based. But one thing that is crucial, that right now there's a lot of discussion about quality teaching and developing our teachers, and this is something that it's visible that the state wants, but we started discussing the problem that we have no experts. So we can, yeah, it's nice that we want to develop teachers, but we cannot do that without experts. So basically we started emphasizing the problem, and one of the outputs was that I'm really happy about was a 3-year project from our government. It's not a lot of money, but it's at least something that is focused only on developing experts. So we received some funding from the state. As I said, not a lot of money, but at least a start.
I think there are many different approaches depending on your context, and many times it's 2 steps forward, 1 step backward, sometimes 2 steps backward. What I noticed is, I know a little bit of all the 4 countries on the States. If you compare it with 10 years ago, there definitely has been a development. There is improvement. And if you are in it, and it many times feels like, my goodness, no one is listening, or we get a new rector who is not interested, or all these kind of things. But if you look in the broader perspective, there is definitely a different attitude towards the quality of education in higher education. So I like to be positive about it.
Basically, me too. At the same time, I would say when you have good circumstances, like a willing rector, for example, that's a window of opportunity to establish some frameworks which will last after this rector is gone. And there is the less,
he or she will stay forever. Okay, in our case, I would like to answer the question how to involve authorities. And we organized, like you, 3 days in the mountains, showing them the value of training, the value and scholarship which is behind the training. And also because of the green competences, which are very popular now in Poland. Those there were vice rector for students affairs and vice deans, all vice deans for students affairs around the university, 17 faculties. And the green competences was really organized in very nice way to become a friend of the nature and that kind of stuff. But the others were really, sorry, I am environmentalist. More serious in the meaning, more about education, training, competences, also assessment. And that our was really focused on that supportive visit, supportive peer visits or supportive visit, and a little bit about evaluation, how to do it properly. From our point of view, means everybody survived the visit.
No.
Hi, thank you very much. I was curious, amongst the 4 of you, you talked about this framework for an educational developer. You've been working together, the 4 of you, exchanging. Can you share with us some significant differences that each of you, maybe amongst each other, have regarding your vision of an educational developer? Are there differences amongst the 4 of you, significant, which you can share with us?
No, how I sense it, I think we have quite a common background or a common idea about what it is, but we didn't discuss it among the 4 of us. So it's an interesting question. What is a difference to work with? What I notice is that in some universities we have educational developers trained as educational scientists or having an educational background. And in some faculties or countries, it's much more an academic in a very specific discipline who becomes who becomes an educational developer. That is complicated. That's a complicated discussion. But I don't know. Yeah.
Just one little thing. It was not discussed super in detail, but I think that what I noticed, and it's not only about these 4 universities, it's in general, that this idea of who an educational developer is, there's this spectrum from being service center unit to a full strategic partnership. And this is something that, and I'm not saying that one is better than the other, I'm saying that we should definitely define what we are at our institution, because we have different perception. I'm talking about we as teaching and learning centers and, for example, university management. We have different idea of what we actually are.
No, we were supposed to shut up. That's what you told us.
We're following the instruction.
Thank you so much. So I'm on the ICED editorial team. So in terms of standards, the Marina Harvey and colleagues have put out a paper around creating a possible framework of standards for academic developers in the Australasian context, which might be something useful to look into to see whether it resonates with your context.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
yes. Hi. Thank you so much for presenting on this topic. It's really interesting. I came in here and I got way more than I expected, so thank you all for what you've shared. My name is Jess Zeitler. I'm sharing that because context is important, right? I work at the University of Arizona on the border in Arizona in the United States, and I am a multilingual instructional designer, and I work in a center that's probably in that complex situation. We, in terms of our capacity, we're quite large, and so all of our educational developers are split into categories of what they do. And so when thinking about developing the developer, I was really challenged, but also very intrigued on like each of your topics, because on one side I'm an instructional designer, sometimes I'm a facilitator, but there's educational developers that are only dedicated to facilitation, and educational developers that are only dedicated to technology. And on my side, educational developers that are only dedicated to instructional design. And so in thinking about that complexity, I was really challenged. So just kind of as a comment, thank you. And I would personally love to see like an international cohort collaboration, sharing these ideas and kind of peer learning and growth in this area.
Thank you very much. Does anybody want to respond, or should
we organize something like that because we need to answer the hot topic which appear at the university. So we have a group of educational developers dealing with AI currently, and we have another group dealing with mentoring. Not everybody from our team is a mentor. Yeah? So it works. I find it very useful.
Yeah, so I think I also totally agree. I think in frameworks that have been used, for instance, in the Netherlands, they also make distinctions between, for instance, facilitators and advisors, or at least that an educational developer should possess all of those competences. But I think in reality, we notice also in our institutions, there are some people who are maybe more of a facilitator and other people more of an advisor. So I think that's also something to think about, like, should an educational developer have all of these competences, or could you also divide between those distinct roles? So good comments, thanks for that.
One more comment, Simon?
Another question.
No, I think apologies, but we're going to end it there because I want you to have enough time to go to your next session. So we only have a minute left anyway. Thank you all for being here. This is certainly a topic that's also the one-on-one type of conversation that needs to happen. So please find each other, talk to each other, but we'll see you around the rest of the time. And thanks again for your patience dealing with the delays at the beginning.
quick group picture?
Oh,
yeah. No, but you should be in there. And
Session will be covering the theme collaborative academic development and teaching communities. As you may know, this session is in some way most informal and interactive, let's say. So I hope you like it, enjoy it. I would like to remind all the presenters and speakers that you will have 15 minutes. So we'll. You could go longer if you want. Let's say it this way. Okay, let's begin with the first presentation, Strengthening Teachers and Teaching Communities, Experiences with Collective Academic Supervision, presented by Simone Bernstrup and Iris Maria Pedersen.
Hi, welcome. My name is Simone. And my name is Iris. Is this on? Is this one? Oh, yes it is. What about now? Okay, yeah. Great. Yes. Okay, we are pedagogical developers, educational developers from Aarhus in Denmark. And we're here to share some experiences with collective academic supervision. So, for many early career academics, being part of the university pedagogical program can actually be quite a solitary experience. It's often a completely new field with new concepts and even a new language that can feel challenging and unfamiliar. At the same time, we know that developing as a university teacher is not something that happens in isolation. Belonging to a community and receiving feedback from your peers is crucial for building a professional teaching identity. And that is why we decided to implement collective academic supervision, or CAS as we'll call it from now on. With CAS, we wanted to facilitate a sense of collegial community and engagement around teaching practices. We wanted to support and strengthen participants' writing processes and a shared pedagogical language. Also, CAS allows participants to qualify their projects by learning from each other and finding inspiration across their projects. And finally, being part of CAS serves as a concrete example of how to supervise your students collectively yourself.
So the basic idea of CAS is actually quite simple. Participants work on their own individual projects, but they meet in small groups and receive supervision together. In these sessions, they give feedback to a peer's work and act a bit like opponents for one another. So the responsibility for the learning process is shared across the whole group, not just between supervisor and participant. Now, the participants that we designed this for are not your typical university teachers. They're assistant professors working in applied technical sciences. They're primarily researchers and consultants, and they don't necessarily have regular teaching obligations. So while they're required to take a pedagogical course, they don't always see it as directly relevant to their everyday work. Now, let us introduce you to Maya, who's a constructed persona representing the course participants. First, she will share her thoughts about the university pedagogical program before starting the course.
So my head of section told me the other day that if I want to be an associate professor, I need to take this course on university teaching. But the only teaching I do is like one guest lecture a year, so kind of seems like a waste of time to me. And I really don't have the time between my research and my advisory work, and I mean, maybe there'll be something useful there. He did say that there'll be
actually be nice to get some input or talk to someone about supervision instead of just doing what I do now, like acting on my own intuition and my own experiences. I guess I'll just have to make the time for it and hope the course offers something relevant for me.
To support exactly relevance, we chose to facilitate both the participants' writing process and their peer feedback quite tightly. In other words, we scaffolded not just what they were working on, but also how they were giving peer feedback. We knew from research that the tightness of the structure could be challenging for the participants, but that it would also be crucial for getting the full benefit of this approach. So, before each meeting, the participants uploaded a written draft answering those scaffolding questions. After uploading the draft, they received feedback from both their peers and supervisors in due time to acquaint themselves with it before the CAS meeting. Now, let's hear what Maya thinks about this tight scaffolding.
If CAS hadn't structured and paced my project and writing process, I would have ended up doing it all last minute. Of course, the deadlines were also a bit stressful at the time, but in hindsight, it would have been so much easier to postpone the project writing and prioritize other tasks instead. So I guess the guiding steps and the deadlines really did support my process. Also, I liked that you were responsible for your colleague. You take it way more seriously than if it was just your own deadline. And we were all co-responsible for the CAS meetings to be substantial and worth the time.
As supervisors, we were also keen on the CAS meetings being worth the time. Therefore, another focal point was to create a space for discussing teaching and supervision, where they could inspire each other, share doubts, and ask all the stupid questions. So, in short, support a collegial community. The structure of the meetings and our facilitation was then designed for our participants to help each other forward. In each feedback round, the owner of the text started out by sharing what they had doubts about or wanted help with to move forward with the project. This was then the subject for the following discussion in a reflective team. During this team discussion, the text owner only listened in and took notes. Afterwards, the text owner rejoined the conversation by answering the questions, what do you take with you from your peers' discussion, and what is your next step? These were our efforts to make the meetings worth the time, but did the participant experience it as such?
During the CAS sessions, I really felt kind of like a shift in how I worked with my project, because reading my peers' drafts and giving feedback actually made me see my own project more clearly. I often, picked up ideas from them, sometimes small things like a different way of framing something, and other times bigger things like how to think about design or evaluation. Really, it was the group discussions that made the biggest difference. That's where things kind of clicked for me, where I found myself rethinking and developing my project further. You talk with people in a similar state, not only the teachers, but like people experiencing at the same level. And that was quite eye-opening and helped me to reflect on my own issues. So really, the whole community aspect was great. The sessions created this shared space where we could talk openly about teaching. And at times, it felt a bit like group therapy. In a way, it was easier to be honest about uncertainty, and I became much more comfortable saying, I'm not sure about this, and actually discussing it with colleagues instead of feeling like I had to solve everything on my own. We were all struggling with how to do pedagogical development in different ways, and we kind of used each other to figure it out. That was more helpful than I thought it could be, and I could definitely adopt this format with my students. It benefits everyone. They receive more feedback, and I can streamline teaching and mentoring more effectively.
So, from Maya's statements, we seem to have succeeded in some of the things that we set out to do when designing and implementing CAS. But the question remains, how did we as supervisors experience CAS? Overall, we agree that the whole process went surprisingly well for a pilot test run. We are overwhelmed, actually, with the statements and the evaluations from Maya, representing our entire group of participants. And we will continue with CAS in this course and also look into how to implement it in other courses. But we also met challenges, and our three most important learnings are: first, preparation is imperative for the meetings to be valuable and the conversations substantial. Meaning that the participants have read each other's projects, that they have provided feedback to each other, and that they have read the feedback they received. We did experience that even when the written feedback might not be thorough, if they were well prepared, the conversations made it up for that because they could engage in the discussions in the meetings.
Second, it's challenging if someone in the group cannot participate in the meeting. It's really hard to reschedule due to busy calendars, and if someone is missing from the meeting, another one might get less qualified feedback. So to decrease vulnerability, we believe it's a good idea to rotate who gives feedback to whom. And third and last, it takes practice to facilitate CAS meetings. To keep track of time is one thing. Another is to hold back in the discussion, making room for the participants and keep the expert answers to yourself. Taking too much of an expert role can undermine the participants' experience of community and of benefiting constructively from each other as peers. So we are very aware of positioning ourselves as facilitators more than experts in CAS meetings by asking more questions, encouraging their peer conversation rather than giving answers. So, can collective academic supervision strengthen teachers and teacher communities? From both Maya's and our preliminary experiences, it seems so, and we'll definitely keep trying. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simone. Thank you very much, Iris Maria. Next talk will be Pathfinding Culture of Collaborative Learning, Building Momentum for a National TBL Hub in Irish Higher Education, presented by Anne O'Brien.
Okay, actually that one, can you hear me without the microphone? Do I need it? Okay, so that one's going to be hard to follow now. I wasn't. Is that on? Sorry, doing everything wrong. Oh yeah, we're on now. Okay, that's hard to follow. I don't think I'm wondering now, have I followed the format? But anyway, I'm going to plough ahead, whether I have or I haven't. So you'll have to bear with me. So the title here is talking about defining a culture of collaborative learning. And I am going to talk about collaborative learning during this presentation. But first, I'm going to talk about collaborations and how this all started. So there's a lot today. Actually, I was in presentations earlier and it was about collaborations, and now we're talking about collaborations here, how important they are. So this all started not in a classroom, but with collaborations with two universities, with two universities in Ireland, the University of Manchester, and with our national forum, the funding body, and a staff room full of people who, they weren't sure if team-based learning, which is what I'm going to talk about, they weren't sure if that was worth all the bother in changing their programs. And while collaborative learning might be where this talk ends, it wasn't where it began. So TBL made me actually want to come to class. So we'll kind of think about that for a minute. And that's a real student after one semester doing team-based learning. And so what this whole talk is about is how we came together with the two universities and the University of Manchester so that we could make this sentence happen more than once. So like anything, we were trying to solve a problem. And I think the problem here is one that everyone's familiar with. You know, I don't need to tell you about it. We've all seen the disconnected, the unmotivated, the disengaged students. And we were looking to put something in place that would solve that. So we'd had team-based learning in TUS and Athlone for a number of years, and we'd gained a good bit of traction with it. But it was plateauing. So even with all that traction, it wasn't kind of moving anywhere. So what was going on? So if we look here, we can see, we just did a quick toss-up of some figures, and we looked at the number of LAMS lessons that were built. LAMS is a learning platform that we use for our TBL lessons, and for here I'm using this as a proxy for the number of TBL lessons that were built by staff. So you can see for 3 years, we had a lot of team-based learning going on, but it was steady. It wasn't increasing. Then in 2025, it almost doubled. Now we all know what kind of happened around that time frame and why people started looking for different ways of teaching. And it's not that I'm saying across our two universities that we didn't have innovative and dedicated teachers. We had bucket loads of them, but what we didn't maybe have was a pathway, a shared space where people could come together, like we've been talking about in all these for collaborations. So this happened in 2025. But then in the last year, in 2026, it isn't even a bar chart anymore, a bar in the chart. With the collaboration, the AI urgency, suddenly we moved from this one faculty, and the faculty that we mainly had the TBL in TUS was in science. I'm a scientist and I work in that faculty, but it suddenly went from multi-faculty and to cross-university. One of the things that led to this was we introduced a team-based learning 15-credit module. It was designed in TUS and built in TUS, but available to all universities, and anyone can come along to our programs, including our partner university in this, SETU. And I actually meant to say at the beginning, I got totally distracted by the great presentation ahead of me, that my colleagues in this project is Dr. Nuala Harding, who's actually, she's here, she was presenting earlier. She's the head of the Teaching and Learning CPID in TUS and Technological University of the Shannon. And then our colleague Gina Noonan, so hopefully she's watching online. And Gina is the head of the Teaching and Learning in Southeastern Technological University of the Shannon, SETU. So this program was built in TUS, but it's available to everyone. And what we saw, and it's actually one of the things that struck me earlier as well, is that, you know, people saying workshops, one-off events, they're not necessarily, maybe they don't work so good. So this is a module, a 15-credit module. It's run over 3 days. It's intensive, 3 full days with learning beforehand and a portfolio afterwards. So students come into this and they redesign a live module that they have into team-based learning. So they're being taught differently than they're used to seeing. And last year, in 2025, we had 17 staff enrolled and took part in this program. This year, we just ran it again actually a few weeks ago in June. We had 36 staff on it from across multiple campuses in TUS, and actually that was the maximum number of people we could take. So we had a waiting list for it. So this has made a big difference. But in that big spike we saw, that wasn't the only thing. So I talked about collaboration and collaborative learning, and some of the partners involved. So the big pivot here was actually with the University of Manchester team, who do a lot of team-based learning and have recently changed over whole programs from PBL into TBL. So we brought heads of department, deans, academic leaders to Manchester University, where they witnessed TBL in action. They spoke to staff. They spoke to students. They heard staff telling us that the change from going to team-based to collaborative approach learning, that it wasn't subtle. It was very obvious. They saw students who might have been passive cohorts of students. They're sitting, they're discussing, they're critiquing, they're arguing with each other. We heard one staff member say that this made them remember why they came into education in the first place. So this was impactful, and our academic leaders thought this as well. So what actually changed from this is that this, and I think again why we saw the spike, it went from being one person's sort of experiment or hobby horse to multi-faculty, multi-university, and multi-campus. Students were saying that this made them want to come to class. They felt involved. They weren't just listening. Staff said things like it helped us address AI concerns, and the academic leaders could see it as a scalable model, which I think they're happy with that idea. So the AI crisis, we didn't need to explain that to staff. They were telling us, and some of the things that the team-based learning that we did addressed was, it actually addressed two issues in one. So the academic integrity and engagement, or lack of engagement. So the two arguments actually became one argument, and we didn't need to say any more to them on that. But then the story didn't end. So the University of Manchester, they came back in May. They came to Ireland, they brought their team. We had 50 plus staff from two institutions, SETU and TUS, engaged with the University of Manchester team at a busy time of year because we've externs and everything in. There was workshops and presentations, and there's just a picture of some of the team there. There's our Director of Teaching and Learning, Nuala Harding, Gina Noonan, Professor Paul Shore and Professor Liz Schuder from University of Manchester, along with their colleagues, Dr. Michael Smith, Dr. Lisa Donlan, and behind there is Ernie Giglioni, who is the Director of LAMS International, and then I'm there. Oh, we're in the same clothes. Anyway, they're different. We'll gloss over that. So we learned some lessons that actually hurt to learn, and one of them is something I mentioned earlier, is that one-off events or one-off workshops, they don't move culture or change cultures, but ecosystems do. So we wanted to build things that had lasting impact, and our 15-credit TBL module is one of those. So leadership buy-in isn't the same as leadership conviction. So they can buy into it and say, oh, that's brilliant, yeah, that's great, let's go do that. But there needs to be conviction and something else on top of that. And our academic leaders, we want them to be developers and not just offering support. So what ties all of these things together, again, is that none of these things can happen without collaboration. And in this instance, as I've said a few times now, with collaboration with TUS, SETU, the University of Manchester, LAMS International, and of course, a whole bunch of staff who showed up for all of this, which obviously none of it would work if that didn't happen. So now, where are we on our windy, twisty road? Well, we're developing Ireland's first national TBL hub. And we're continuing with the professional development, with the communities of practice across not just our own institute, but across both institutions. We're embedding TBL into curriculum, not as an add-on, but in embedding it in as part of the process. We're continuing to support cross-institutional research outcomes, retention, address attention, AI readiness, all of these things that team-based learning works really well for. We're developing open resources, and we're developing the national capacity via our hub and a shared infrastructure and a vision. So the tipping point is behind us, but there's an awful lot of hard work still ahead of us. But we're determined to get there. And just to sum it all up is this sentence here, that the most future-proof thing we can do is build a generation of students or graduates who can think individually and can work as a team. So, and again, I'd just like to thank everyone involved in this, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne, very much. Last presentation will be publishing in partnership, ethical and equitable co-authorship in faculty developer collaborations, presented by Jessica Taggart, Brina Bernack, and Dana Henry. I'm sorry about the pronunciation.
No, thank you. Yes, hi everyone. So we're here for Publishing in Partnership. My name is Brianna Bayraktar. I'm at George Mason University in Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. And my colleague?
See?
My name is Dana Henry. I'm at James Madison University, which is also in Virginia in the US, but not near Washington, D.C. So.
And our colleague Jessica is at the University of Virginia, also in Virginia, but she's not able to be here with us. So we're here to talk about publishing in partnership, so developing ways of co-authoring with the faculty members we work with and ourselves as academic developers. If you're interested in learning more about our project, the QR code leads to our project website. So we're going to be talking more about the project as we go on, if you want to grab the QR code if you're interested. But the reason why we put this talk together is because we see that academic developers are increasingly occupying what we see as dual roles here, that we facilitate the learning our faculty members are engaging in, but we're also active partners with them in the scholarship of teaching and learning in SOTL projects. And as we are guiding them and leading in a lot of ways these larger and more complex projects, our role in the projects expands. And so we're here to talk about what the expansion of that role has meant. So we're expected often to both support our faculty in conducting their classroom-based inquiry projects, but also kind of step back from it, even though we're discovering more and more that our work as leaders, as guides, as methodological expertise, all of those pieces, is really central to a lot of these projects.
So in this talk, we're going to review some of the strategies that we developed while we were supporting more than 8 cross-institutional and cross-disciplinary teams. And this is a project related to AI. We will not talk about AI, so don't worry about that. And it was a mega SOTL project. And on the next slide, I will define what that is if you're not familiar with the term. So you will gain some insights into equitable co-authorship for SOTL projects, and then have some opportunities to reflect on the transferability to your context. So what is mega SOTL? So this is the 4M framework. So much of the time, research that is done where you're trying to understand what's happening in the classroom, and often as ed developers, we're supporting faculty in learning what is SOTL. Maybe they're already doing this type of work in their classroom where they're making pedagogical innovations and changes, and we're like, hey, you can systematically study that and publish it. A lot of that is happening at the micro level, so at the individual instructor or classroom level. These types of projects can happen at the department level, so within the same faculty, I would say, or at the university level, at the institutional level. Mega SOTL, which is the project that we did, is studying teaching across disciplines, so across different faculties, and across institutions. so at different universities. And this was contextually done within one state. So all of our projects occur within the state of Virginia.
So here's a little bit of information about our project. It's the Collaborative Research on Education and Artificial Intelligence. And so we brought together, as Dana said, a collection of instructors, staff, and graduate students from across multiple institutions. It started with the umbrella topic of looking at artificial intelligence and its changing impacts on the teaching happening in our different institutions. We launched the project back in the summer of 2023 with myself, Dana, and Jessica as the PIs, but also the project managers, the facilitators. We're doing a lot of those roles, and in bringing people together to be able to help them to form different research teams. So this is a representation of all the different institutions that we have. So a lot of the work that we do is collaborating and connecting people across the different disciplines and across the different institutions to help them find partners that are looking at the specific topics that they're interested in at the other institutions in our group.
So as Brianna mentioned, we're not just here to support the faculty in doing SOTL work. We're acting as the principal investigators on all of the studies. And so taking on a project of this size, we now have more than 10 research projects that are happening that the three of us are managing. We had to develop some strategies for taking on this work. So the first thing that we did was we developed transparent authorship guidelines that were co-developed with the researchers on the teams. And so our teams contain faculty who are educators who teach, staff who often work in supported roles at the university, and may include folks like librarians, people who work in advising or in the career office, and then we also have students on our teams. And so we wanted to develop these transparent guidelines because we have to navigate these different roles and these different positionalities and power that comes into play between us as ed developers and the other roles that people inhabit on the team. We also had to revisit the roles and the contributions as projects evolved. So we have leaders for each of the teams, but at different times, different team members took on more or less work. And so while we asked them to document their authorship discussions, we also facilitated conversations where those needed to change because people had taken a back step, they'd taken a step back, not contributing as much, and other people had filled in the space and taken on more of the projects. And then we also helped them discover different dissemination pathways. So because there are different folks who are involved in the projects, they may not be interested in publishing in peer-reviewed journal articles because that's not going to help them in their careers. And so looking for alternative pathways for dissemination, including practitioner-facing reports, conference sessions, institutional briefs, and for each of these projects, we help them negotiate credit. And so this is really important because equity sometimes requires flexibility rather than uniformity, and there were a lot of tensions that we experienced around power, voice, and ownership, and us just naming that is not sufficient. We had to create policies and document them and continue to revisit them over time. And so we'll say we did not come into the project with all of this. These are things we learned along the way. So just one example of a document that we created is our policies and procedures document, and it includes all of the things that you can see on the slide, including definitions for people's roles and responsibilities, as well as how the work could get disseminated, funding acknowledgements, record keeping, and then consequences for violation, which we unfortunately did have to talk with some folks about. And so right now we're working on a mega SOTL toolkit, which we will hopefully publish open access soon, which will contain samples and information of the things that we've developed so that if you were interested in putting together a mega SOTL project in your context, you would learn from our lessons and be able to benefit from the things that we developed over the years of the project. And the goal of all of our documentation is increased transparency between us and the research team members. So they knew what our role was, what their roles were, what their expectations were, and then what sort of our expectations were for who, for example, owns the data, who's allowed to publish the data, and what are the circumstances under which someone could disseminate the work.
So one of the questions that we have thought a lot about, and we would invite each of you to think about as well, is thinking about ways that we as developers are claiming our scholarly identities in ways that support the faculty with whom we work, but that are equitable to both them and us, and how we can help to continue the thinking and the talking about that in these sort of dual roles we have as we continue to work with the instructors on a variety of different research projects. We do have some resources. So we've published a couple of papers. One of them, Silos to Synergy, talks a lot about this project as a model. And as Dana said, on our website, we'll be publishing soon information that we use sort of our policy documents as sort of a toolkit for anyone else who is interested in tackling a megasodal project. We would also be happy to talk more with anyone about our experience over the last 3 years in leading this project. It's been incredibly professionally and personally rewarding for us. I love research, and so this has given me an outlet to do that when, as a developer, we don't necessarily have a lot of spaces there to do that. Dana has cared about that. She just made full professor, so maybe she cares less now.
No.
But she's stuck with me, so she has to keep going.
Well, and we haven't published this work yet either, but we've been evaluating the process from the perspective of the research team members as well. And so they've shared with us how it's been professionally important to them as well. For many of them, they had never engaged in a SOTL project in the past. This was their first SOTL project. We had some more experienced SOTLers as well. There was opportunities for students to work across disciplines and universities. And for many of the folks that were on our research teams, they told us sort of informally that being a part of this process has opened up professional doors for them and opportunities that that they wouldn't have had they not joined this project. And for many of them, they were sort of interested in AI, but didn't know who else was interested in it. And so this was an opportunity for them to find like-minded people across different universities where those folks might not have existed. And then in terms of equity as well, not every institution in our state has a Center for Teaching and Learning. There are many faculty working at institutions without faculty development support. So by joining this project, it's given them an opportunity to get the support for SOTL from us at our institutions because we are funded by the state to provide that support, and also for them to connect and collaborate with researchers at other universities where research may not be an important part of their job, but they're interested in it, and so this is an outlet for them as well to find collaborators for research at other institutions.
And so if you want to learn more, we have a mailing list that I promise I only send maybe 1 or 2 emails a semester that you can sign up for, but you are also welcome to reach out to us directly, and our contact information is going to be on the website as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we do questions?
Thank you very much, Brina. Thank you very much, Jessica. This final talk brings this session to an end. So thank you very much, all of you, and good afternoon.